Great. It's great to see so many people coming in. So I'll try and make my intro slow because I know we've just started at 2:30, just because there will be some people still joining. But I just wanted to say to everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to the information session for the Industry Partner Organisation Reopen Stage 2 grant program. And this forms part of the department's industry growth program, and should remind people to please put yourselves on mute, unless, of course, there's good reason to interrupt. That way I don't get the echo. But as Susan mentioned, my name is Joanna Leck. I'm a manager in the Industry Growth Program branch, part of Oz Industry. I'm joined by colleagues in the branch, including Business Grants Hub. And thank you all for making the time today and your interest in this IPO grant opportunity and joining. We hope that the session is helpful and helps you just understand some of the key elements of the program and the process for applying. And just to start with some housekeeping, just before we start, we are recording this session, and this is just to make it available for everybody, including those that weren't able to attend today. So just keep that in mind when you're asking questions. And in terms of questions that you might have, we will have time at the end of the presentation for questions, as some of the questions you might have will be covered in the presentation. But please let us know if you require clarification on any points that I'm making within the presentation, if any of that is unclear. And if you do have questions, just submit them through the chat function or raise your hand during the question and answer part of the information session. And that way one of us can unmute you and give you the opportunity to ask. And if there are any questions we can't answer today, we will make sure to answer these outside of the session, make those available to everybody. So that might be via an email to all participants or updating the Q&A document that I'll cover shortly. And really, this is just in keeping with the department's priority that consistent information is provided to all potential grant recipients, and just make sure that no party receives an unfair advantage over the other. So to manage this, we are unable to answer specific questions about proposed projects that you may wish to put forward. So please keep that in mind when you are asking questions. They do have to be more general in nature, not specific to what your application is about. And we are also collating questions and answers from this program in a question and answer document, or the Q&A documents. And we plan to share this with all applicants. So an updated Q&A document with questions received since last week can be found on business.gov.au, which some of you might have already seen. And just to flag the speakers, one of them is me, Joanna Leck. I'll lead us through the majority of this presentation, then at the end hand over to Susan King to finish before we go to questions. And just to cover the agenda, and the next slide is just an outline of what we'll cover. And as mentioned, there will be time at the end for questions. So we'll make sure that there's enough there so we can go through anything that you might want to raise. So on the next slide, to jump in, we did want to cover the policy context, and really just to give you a view of why we're reopening this grant for stage 2 applications. The department is inviting applications for grant funding for projects that provide expert advice on commercialization and early stage business growth to startups and high growth SMEs operating within NRF priority areas, and to deliver specialized advisory services that are specifically designed to complement the advice of the program's IGP advisors, providing for businesses participating in the program. And we'll expand on these program technicalities later in the presentation. Note, when I refer to businesses participating in the program, this is often shortened to SMEs, but includes innovative startups and SMEs in that sense. And for the program, the industry growth program objectives, the government's current policy focus for the IGP, particularly for this IPO grant program, is most closely reflected in assessment criterion 1 of the grant guidelines. That is, the specialized advisory services to be offered through your proposed project, including any relevant facilities.
I'm trying to finish quickly.
Oh, sorry. Just a reminder to put yourself on mute, just so we don't interrupt the presentation. Thank you. And so in terms of the assessment criterion 1, I think I was saying specialized advisory services to be offered through a proposed project. So that includes any relevant facilities or resources to be made available to SMEs. And you must demonstrate how this is different from your core business activities. And another part of this is how your project would deliver on the grant opportunity objectives and outcomes as documented in section 2.1 of the grant opportunity guidelines, and the extent to which your organisation specialises in one or more of the NRF priority areas, in which areas, and why and how you can draw from on this sectoral expertise for the benefit of SMEs. And lastly, your ability to work with other IPOs to complement the needs of IGP advisory services. You must demonstrate specific opportunities for collaboration, particularly in advanced manufacturing, which I'll cover in the next slide, with the primary aim of adding value and avoiding duplication. So in the next slide, we do cover the points made on advanced manufacturing. We wanted to highlight this given the updated grant opportunity guidelines. They are more targeted, and this is to address the need for horizontal support on advanced manufacturing across the NRF priority areas. So this is one of the key differences from the first IPO grant round. And what we've provided here is just as a guide only, a definition on the slide for advanced manufacturing that you may wish to consider in your application response. This is just drawn from the CSR or Advanced Manufacturing Roadmap report. It is just as a guide in terms of just giving a bit of extra guidance on what we were looking for. And just to include some points to highlight from the guidelines, these are extracts as well, to highlight some but not all references to the NRF and advanced manufacturing to provide a view of the more targeted approach to this grant's objectives. But we still encourage you to please read through the complete guidelines to inform how your grant application can best meet the requirement to demonstrate how your project aligns with these objectives. And as per the first IPO grant round, IPOs must deliver specialized advisory services that are specifically designed to complement the advice being provided by IGP advisors and the support provided to businesses participating in the program. So I know I've said that a few times, was essentially to really highlight that we would like those applications to demonstrate that this is different to your usual business as usual activities, and it's something tailored and specific to the program. And the next few slides will include some key information extracted from the guidelines. Just some key points to highlight here are that applications close on Wednesday, 25th of September, 2024. There's up to 1.92 million available for this reopened stage 2 grant opportunity, and the minimum grant is 500,000. And finally, the project period is up to 18 months and must be completed by 31 May 2026. So all this information can be found on page 9 of the grant guidelines. And in the next slide, this covers the eligibility criteria, and this can be found at the bottom of page 9 and on page 10 of the updated guidelines. And one point to highlight, because we have had a few questions on this, which is in the Q&A document, but to cover on joint applications or consortia applications, these are acceptable provided you have a lead organisation who's the main driver of the project and is eligible to apply. And so for further information on joint applications, refer to section 7.2 of the grant opportunity guidelines, and just expand on that. Only organisations that have been invited to submit an application for this reopen stage 2 may apply for a grant as part of this grant opportunity. So the invitation code is not transferable to an affiliate or any other organisation, so just needs to be as part of that pool. And for the next slide, on assessments, if your application passes the eligibility assessment, a merit assessment will then be undertaken, and we consider all eligible applications on their merits. So this is based on how well it meets the criteria, how it compares to other applications, and whether it provides value with relevant money. And there are 3 assessment criteria. All must be addressed in the application, and they can be found on pages 13 and 14 of the updated grant guidelines. And in terms of responses, just to highlight the approach to this reopen grant, responses to stage 2 assessment criteria do require more detail than those that were provided in the EOI stage from the first IPO grant round. This is a different approach, a different grant guidelines, but just to highlight that stage 2 does require the additional detail. And we will assess the application based on the weighting given to each assessment criteria, and the amount of detail and supporting evidence you provide in your application should be relative to the project size, complexity, and the grant amount requested. And the department will only consider funding applications that score at least 50% against each criterion as per the guidelines. And we've noted the 3 criteria there to cover in your application. And for the next slide, in terms of the assessment approach, the department will establish an IPO assessment panel, and this will be made up of department representatives to assess applications. And this is outlined in page 18 of the guidelines. And this is a competitive grants process. So the panel will assess each eligible application against assessment criteria and compare it to other eligible applications, taking into account program objectives before making recommendations on which projects to fund. And the panel will make a recommendation to the program delegate as the decision maker. And in the event you are not successful, you can seek feedback on your application after the outcomes have been approved and announced. And to cover on the rest, I'll pass on to Susan King to outline how you can submit your application.
Thanks, Joanna. That was great. And I do notice we've got a couple of questions there. So I'll just be very quick on giving you some information on how to apply, and then we'll go to the questions that were on the chat, and we'll see whether or not we can even manage the unmute, but that might be too difficult with the number of people. So how to apply? You have to go and apply for this grant opportunity through the portal, just like you submitted your stage 1 EOI application. We'll send out the emails after this session that contains the invitation code. I think the point that Joanna made that the invitation codes are not transferable is a very pertinent point for you to note, because that will be one of the checks that we do for eligibility. We ask that you don't provide additional information that hasn't been requested. So just it's not going to add more to your application by adding stuff that we haven't asked for, but please make sure that all of the required attachments are attached. There's a 2 megabyte per attachment limit. And if you have any difficulty with attaching documents, or the documents are too large, or there's any issues with the portal, can you please reach out to the IPO grants at industry.gov.au, which I posted in the chat at the start of the meeting, but post please to the email address and let us know. It is very important that you get in touch with us if you have any issues with lodging your application before the cutoff of 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday, the 25th of September. Because it's a system issue, the second that the clock ticks over to 5 p.m, the system will no longer accept applications. So you can't get an application at like 5 p.m. and 10 seconds. It's too late. So the earlier you get in touch with us, the much easier it will be for us to deal with whatever issue there is, and no late applications will be accepted for this program. So please, if you're having any problems, let us know about it early. If we could go to the next slide, please, just on the grant opportunity guidelines reminder. I think Joanna's given you an excellent walk through the guidelines. We want to remind people that the guidelines are the key document that you must refer to, and make sure that you address that criteria. Please do not rely on the previous guidelines, even though there's not significant changes. And also you need to address that need for horizontal support on advanced manufacturing across the NRF priority areas, which is one of the big changes. We've also attached in the email where people were first invited to this program. That email went out last Wednesday. You would have noticed that we attached a copy of the reopened grant application form. We also attached a sample grant agreement. We also attached a couple of templates, one for a board or CEO letter of approval, one with an accountant's declaration template for you. If something happened and you're unable to open those attachments or anything like that, again, please go to the IPO grants at industry.gov.au mailbox. So I think might be a good time now, Joanna, to go for some questions. So I'll just go and have a look in the chat. I'll try and scroll up to the top. I think the first question we have is, do we have any advice on how we can demonstrate specific opportunities for collaboration with IPOs and advisor program? Is there any way to gain visibility over the current projects and advice of existing IPO recipients so we can work out how we can complement this? I won't be able to give you any advice on how you can demonstrate the specific opportunities for collaboration, but I can tell you that the 5 industry partner organisations that have already received grants, the names of them are all published on Grant Connect. There's nothing to stop you from reaching out to those existing applicants. Did you have anything you might want to add to that, Jo?
Yeah, I think I was thinking we could take this back to and see what we can share. I know this goes to what the current delivery model looks like. So definitely agree with Susan to do that desktop research. And if there's anything else we can expand on, we can see if we can cover that at a session.
Thanks. The next question I think we have is how many were invited to apply. We don't advise people how many applicants were invited to reapply, but I think most people that have used Teams before can see how many people are in attendance, and that will give you a pretty good idea. Though noting that there will be some organisations that have sent multiple attendees and some that will have sent none. Then we have applications are due in less than 2 weeks. It's a very late stage information session. Is there any chance of extending the due date? No, there's no chance of extending the due date. We do apologise for the tight time frame, but that is in part because after we've run the round 1 and onboarded the industry partner organisations, I think, Jo, the demand for the services and SMEs to assist them is huge, much greater, I think, than what we expected. And so the minister's really encouraging us to try and get some help to those SMEs expediently. And that is the main reason. With this program, we're hoping that within 18-month time frame that people will be able to kick off their projects in November. So to pretty much close the applications, for us to go through the merit assessment process, make our recommendations to the program delegate, and have a decision in time to contract the successful IPO or IPOs in November to get started straight away. I think then with only 1.92 available, how many grants are you expecting? With the minimum grant amount of 500,000 K, the most grants that we are able to award is 3. So it will be between 1 and 3. The minister would like us to award a grant, but if the program delegate, if we don't get any programs, projects proposed that are of good quality, the program delegate and the committee may not recommend any for funding. So it's because it's a merit-based process, but it will be between hopefully 1 and 3. Can we charge for events? You cannot charge SMEs for the services that are being provided through the industry partner organisation program. So the whole idea of the government providing the funding to the IPOs is so that the IPOs can then provide the services to SMEs for free. That's not to say that at a later time, as your relationship with the SMEs develops, that you can't do other services or have ongoing business or something with the SMEs, but it's very clear. I'm pretty sure it's in the guidelines. I'd have to have a look at what page, that you cannot be charging the SMEs for attending any events or the services that you're providing. Next question is, if the scope of our proposal has evolved slightly since the first stage, is that an issue? The answer is no, that's not an issue at all. There's no restrictions in the guidelines or in being in the invitation to stage 2 that you even have to submit the same project. So the scope is, and you have the ability to be able to tweak and align your proposed project with what services you could deliver, because we also understand that when you originally submitted your stage 1 EOI, at that time you were looking at a project over a 2-year span, whereas now you only have 18 months, so that's fine to change the scope of your proposal. What do you mean by horizontal support? Okay, maybe Joe, that might be for you when we talk about the horizontal support for advanced manufacturing.
Yes, I was going to say, so that is essentially across the NRF priority areas. So really, if you there's a requirement that you demonstrate an ability to provide specialist sectoral advice in one or more of the NRF priority areas. So where you can demonstrate that in those in that NRF priority areas or more, that's definitely a strength. So it's really, for us, it's just a way to say that we're interested in seeing applications where they demonstrate that advanced manufacturing speciality in any one of those NRF priority areas, and where there's more than one, that's definitely a benefit too.
Thanks, Joe. Next question. Would you be able to give some context why this has been reopened and the background to the changes? Okay. Just to be clear on the answer I provided, I'm not sure before if that covered all of this, but really the demand from SMEs that are in the advanced manufacturing sphere is great enough to warrant having more specialised services available to them. So that's the reason, is basically increased demand, and the changes to the guidelines, they mostly, I don't know if people had a look, but when you would have opened to the guidelines, we tried to highlight in yellow some of the key points, such as the reduced funding, the shortened project period to deliver, when the project had to be completed by, and then some of the other changes in the guidelines just reflected that at the time the original guidelines were written, we hadn't actually onboarded any industry partner organisations. So now we've onboarded 5 industry partner organisations. So we know, what NRF priority areas are being covered to an extent, also geographically where services are being provided. So this was just, I guess, being a little bit more targeted, because let's say we just don't want to have, and I'm just making this up, but we don't want to have, 6 IPO providers all delivering medical sciences in New South Wales and no services for anyone else in Australia. Then next question, can you please clarify the requirements for the required national security plan in question F11 and the extent level the department sees as appropriate or expected? What is the department's expectation, the level of certification, IT, cyber? I think we'll have to get back to you on that requirement for the national security plan, because I would have to go and just have a quick look up that in the guidelines. So we'll make sure that that gets updated as part of that Q&A document. You already rejected our proposal once. What has changed this time round? Okay, the original proposals weren't rejected. They just weren't successful in moving to the stage 2 at that time. And that's because this is a competitive process. So your applications are compared to other people's applications. Obviously, with 5 of those people already receiving grants, they're not part of this second pool. So you have a reduced competition. So I just want to make that clear, that the applications were not rejected, that it's a competitive process. They just weren't competitive enough at that time to proceed to stage 2. Can we build on our original EOI project in more details? Yes, absolutely. You can build on your original EOI project in more detail, and the expectation of moving to stage 2 is that you do provide more detail than what you submitted in stage 1. In relation to collaborations between organisations, can a secondary partner, not the primary applicant, be an investor and or get fees for service? There aren't so many restrictions on joint application or consortiums getting together. The main restrictions around consortiums or joint applications is that the person that actually applies, or the entity that actually applies, has to meet the eligibility requirements of being not-for-profit, etc. And they also have to be the lead. So they can't just be like the face applying for the grant with the project partners who are then going to actually go ahead and do everything. But it's very clear in the guidelines, and I'm just trying to think which section, but there is a section in eligibility, which I think is at 4.1, that says that the whole idea of this is that the department is not handing over a list of new clientele for you to make money off. So basically, that's the summary of it. So you are allowed to have a partner that is a for-profit organisation or anything like that, but the whole idea is that any SMEs that are serviced as part of the industry partner organisation program are not to be charged for those services that are offered as part of the program. Can we still seek feedback on our previous submission? If you talk to me, yes, please. If you still want feedback and you didn't take that opportunity before to receive feedback on your stage 1 EOI, I'm very happy to give you some couple of very high level dot points of feedback. Please send that through to ipogrants@industry.gov.au and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I think those people that have had feedback already, I think I'm up to date, so hopefully it won't be too long. Other programs offered under the grant limited to SME that have been awarded IGP funding, or will they be open to everyone? Okay, I'm not 100% sure. The programs offered under the grant limited to SME that have been, the industry growth program, it's actually got quite a few components. So part of the services offered by the industry growth program are the specialist advisory services. Then there's also 2 grant programs that are available for SMEs that have been recommended by either the department or the specialist advisors to get grants. So maybe someone in the chat may have to just clarify.
Susan, if it helps, in terms of the, I guess, if this is a question around what your target client is as an IPO, it would be businesses that are participants in the program, they travel through to the advisory services first, and this is where the IPOs at the moment we're building the service model and the referral process, and it's implemented now, but in terms of currently it is focused more on the advisory services prior to an applicant applying for a grant. Usually what happens is a business goes to the advisory service, and then they ultimately receive a report from an advisor. So through that process, they may have interacted with an IPO or not. It depends on what works best for them. And then once they get that report, the advisory services report from the advisor, that's when they may then choose to apply for an IGP grant. So there is an opportunity, a possibility that IPOs could continue to support businesses after they receive the the advisory services report from the advisor. That's a possibility. So it's less likely just because the idea is that the support that they receive from IPOs and advisors is more focused in that phase before they then ultimately get their report with recommendations on supporting that business to commercialize and grow. So hopefully that answers the question around where an IPO would be placed in the broader intent for the program.
Thank you, Joe. And if that doesn't answer the question, we're happy for you to just flick it through to that IPO grants at industry.gov.au, and we'll do our best to answer that. Then we have another question about section 3.1 of the guidelines says 10.8 million is available. That seems to be different. The 10.8 million refers to the industry partner organisation program as a whole, but we have already awarded 5 grants out of that 10.8 million. So there's only 1.92 million available to provide further grants at this time. How long do you expect the contracting process to take, given your with the first phase of the program, we did pretty much all the contracts in less than a month. So we expect the contracting process, what generally happens is that we prepare a template and send it out to the IPO, and then you basically kind of check through the template, and the template is based mostly on your application that you submitted, and you just really are checking that your milestones are correct, that you're delivering those milestones at the right time, and then get it back to us. We put it into the grant agreement. People would have received a copy of what the sample grant agreement looks like and see that there's a milestones table in there. So all of the first IPOs were contracted in just a couple of weeks. What will the interaction interface with the IGP program for recipients? How would they work together? That's such a good question, because we were talking about that earlier. So what happens with this program is that all of the clients that you get out of this program are referrals, either directly from the advisors or directly from the department itself. So when an IPO has been awarded a grant, then we'll organise a conversation with the department, and then the department will take you through what the referral process looks like, because we also, we wouldn't want to be sending you 100 people in December right before you're ready to go on leave or whatever else. But we work very closely with people that are the IPOs, and that will be through basically direct meetings with the people that work in the industry growth program area. We referred to a Q&A. When and where would this be published? The Q&A is already published, and it's up to date as of today with all the questions that were received prior to the info service. So that can be found on the business.gov.au business.gov.au website. To be perfectly honest, the quickest way I find it is I just type industry partner organisation into Google. The website that I go to is the business.gov.au website, and you'll scroll through there. We're in the process of still updating it, but if you scroll through there, there's a question and answers document that looks like this, and we've kept all the questions that were asked from the first stage 1 and stage 2, and what we've done is starting from question 22 on page 6, we've added all of the, thank you whoever's posted that, and thank you to our team at business.gov.au for very quickly getting that up on board for us, and it now goes up to question 29. whenever it's updated, which is normally every couple of days, we do also post when it was last updated. So I think if anyone that goes onto that website now, they'll be able to see that it was last updated today. Is there a list of SMEs who have been contacted through or in contact with the IGP? No, there's not a list of SMEs who have been that we share with anybody. However, we did have a question about how many SMEs, and I'll just look at that question and answers document because I think it was about 2,000. So
yes, that's right, Susan. About 2,000 per year.
Yep.
Is that anticipated? Yeah. And I think I'm noticing too a couple of questions on SMEs and referrals from your network. So are SMEs in an IPO's network eligible for the advisory services or those through the referral process? And that would be really any participant that engages with an IPO has to have been accepted and found eligible for the IGP program first. So in terms of if you have SMEs that might benefit from the program, that's something that I think is very much open to any organisation, successful or not for this grant program, to suggest that they apply, but ultimately that they must be found eligible and accepted through the program to then potentially link up with an IPO and ultimately an advisor as well. Sorry, Susan.
And I think that links in like very well, Joe, to the question that we've got above about what will be the interaction interface with the IGP program for recipients. How do they work together? Can IPO find its own client? So I think you've done a brilliant job of answering both of those questions in one hit. And IPO cannot find its own clients. They must come through referrals from the department or the industry advisors. Then I think we've probably, these will probably be the last two questions because I've noticed we've gone over time. Did I hear that correctly? We don't directly recruit the SMEs. They only come through referrals. That's correct. You don't have to do any work to get the SMEs. The department and the advisors are going to do all the work, and then the department will work with you. And this will depend on a lot of things like where you're geographically located, what services you offer, etc. For the referrals. Are you able to select SMEs from the referral, or are we obliged to take? That's just a process that you work through with the department at the time when referrals are coming through, and at the time that you are contracting with the department with your grant agreement, then that's where you can work out with the department what the best way to work with that is. What do the IPO, and then what do the IPOs expected to do? I'm not sure if that relates to something I just said or another question. Is that if they're obliged to take a referral and they don't want to take a referral? I might have to get back to you on that one because I think those questions may be linked. Can you give an example of how many IGP clients of 5 are servicing based on their applications? I don't have any of that information to hand. Maybe, Joe, we could talk to that team and see if we're able to shed any light on that. Yes, who are the industry advisors? Okay, the industry advisors, as part of the industry growth program, they have actually, the department has actually contracted, was there about 18? I think 18 industry advisors, and the industry advisors are people that are assisting SMEs with some specific advice on, I think we have people that specialise in things like defence and other areas. Don't know if you can elaborate more on the industry advisors.
I can. Yes, so the national network of advisors, they are linked up with each participating business in the program, and they work with them one-on-one to support them in the commercialization growth journey. So that's where they it's through various ways they might work with them, but ultimately what they then develop is the advisor will put together, like I mentioned earlier, that advisory services report, and that includes recommendations for that particular business to help grow their business. And really that's where, like we mentioned earlier, in terms of the interaction with IPOs, the advisor themselves may refer that business that they're working with to an IPO that they see most relevant. We've got a, like we mentioned, existing network of IPOs that this grant opportunity is also looking to get an additional IPO to be involved in as well. And I think to also cover on, I think that question around what IPO is expected to do, the guidelines do provide a good amount of detail around the types of services we are looking for. So that will be outlined there as that should give some basis around what kind of services that an IPO can deliver and what we're looking for. But there's a whole range of things that may be specific to one-on-one type engagement with that business, or more of a group setting that can be provided that's specific to that area of priority area and advanced manufacturing. That's definitely what we're looking for as part of this grant opportunity.
And someone has very kindly posted a link to the information on the website about Meet the Advisors. So thank you for posting that. That should give you, that's a great place to get some more information. Then we'll just wrap up now with these last couple of questions. When we said 2,000 applications per year, that was an estimate. At the time we made the estimate, the program has only been going for about, I think the advisors, I'm trying to think, at only about 6 months, maybe, Joe. So that's just a guess. And they're also looking to...
It is a bit of a anticipated, and this is for all that 2,000 numbers SMEs that we expect to apply and to be found eligible for the program. So it's not exclusively for IPOs. It's what we see that will come through the program to begin with. And then in terms of, yes, ultimately, if they're eligible, they all get linked in with an advisor to work one-on-one. So in terms of the exact number per advisor or to IPO really does vary, but this is like to give you a bit of a forecast over the forward years based on the current demand we're seeing. That's what we're seeing in terms of demand on a yearly basis generally for the program.
And then can industry advisors provide opinions on the strength of our project idea? No, the industry advisors don't have anything to do with the program. So, I mean, really, you can ask anyone you want for their opinion on the project, but the best source is the guidelines. And then I think the last one, there was a question that somebody posted when they are referred SMEs. Yeah, I think, Joe, you clarified that it's 2,000 people, not necessarily referred directly to the IPOs, just through the program. And last question, were group settings favourable? So I think I'm wondering if somebody's posing the question like, is it favourable to put in your application where you would, I don't know, hold a seminar or something, where you could invite 100 people? I think that the answer to that is it just depends what services you're offering, because obviously, if you can offer access to some facilities that people in an area might not otherwise be able to access at all, that could possibly be, something that goes in your favour. I think the thing to think about is that it's a competitive process. So your idea that you put forward is going to be competing against other applications that are put forward. So there's not just one thing, I think, Joe, that we're looking for, is there? We need to see what all of the proposed projects are, how well they meet the objectives and the outcomes of the program, which is mostly about supporting SMEs with that advanced manufacturing and horizontal. I don't think we covered the horizontal support. I think Joe gave an answer to the horizontal support question across the priorities, but we'll because we've gone over time, I think we'll just provide that in the Q&As to make sure that people have access to that, which I hope we will have up before the end of the week. So that might wrap up the session, because if you don't let me get out of here, I won't be able to send you the invitation with the invitation code to apply for the grant tomorrow. So don't worry if it's not in your inbox yet. I will be doing it straight after this. We really hope the presentations have been useful. I hope you understand the limitations that we have, that we can't give specific advice on your specific programs, but we had some really good high quality applications last time, and we look forward to seeing some more high quality applications moving forward. So thank you, everybody. And please reach out if you do have trouble once you receive your invitation code. Remember, the portal won't open till tomorrow. I did think we might get a question on that, but we didn't. But it just depends on, we're just waiting for the system team to put everything in place and get that portal open for you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.